First of all, where are the fibers located? And by the way, some people can start feeling the effect just knowing where that spot is. I don't expect you to. We're going to walk you through a series of exercises that help you find these fibers and how to trigger them. I don't expect you to feel anything until we get to the very end. But I do want to point out, I'm not teaching you something you've never done. You have all experienced the brain's natural mood elevation mechanism. And let me give you an example. Think of a time when you got good news or a ray of hope about something. When the loved one is coming home, or when you find out you got that promotion, or you feel that you hear from a vet bud that you care about, or when your children have a piece of good news. You know that feeling of uplift? That like weight coming off the shoulder feeling? That is that body's natural mood elevation mechanism. Some of it's endorphin based, some of it, the brain actually has multiple mood elevation mechanisms. It's kind of like, the space shuttle, how they have backup computer systems. So endorphin pulse is a separate thing. This one is one on its own too. You have experienced that. The problem is, it's just been dependent on external good news. That's why in some ways that can be the ultimate addiction. You're addicted to things going well for your happiness. Do you understand? I want to be real clear. I still have stuff. I got a kid in Afghanistan whose deployment was extended from 6 months to a year. My wife is an award-winning teacher, and the whole state went to no tenure for teachers. She could be fired on 30 days' notice, like that. I still have stuff. I no longer let my stuff run me because I know how to counter limbic brain and trigger this mood boost. So, first thing, where are the fibers located? What makes this remarkably easy to teach as a mind-body technique, and by the way, if anyone's not aware, mind-body is proven. We've proven decades ago that Benson's work with, the relaxation response for blood pressure lowering proved mind-body the West. We've also proven you can teach people to visualize dilating the blood vessels in the hand by thinking their hands warm for migraine relief. That's been out there for a long time. This is actually easier than any of that. The fibers themselves, 2 of the 3 axes in the head, you think exact middle. Side to side, middle. Front to back, middle. Actually, where those fibers are is a little forward of middle, right at the front of the ear level. But to get to middle, you got to go by that front of the ear. And we're going to have you get to that middle with like a strumming or a caressing visualization. The only thing that doesn't work is trying to stab a button. Because the brain works in pulses, the minute you try too hard, you just click into muscle tightness, clenching your jaw. So everything I'm going to be saying, you're using analogies like strum the harp, tickle the fibers, caress the fur of a pet at that level. But it's finding the level you want to do that at that's our first step. So side to side, middle, front to back, middle. Then all you have to know is where is it up and down on the face. And it's at about mid-forehead level. And since some of us have different size foreheads than others, yeah. Then the other way to say it is 1.5 inches or a little more above the eyebrows. Now, if you were teaching this, learning it or teaching it, you always want to err on the side of being too high rather than too low. Why? If you went in with a caress too low, what would you hit? Limbic brain. So always practice air too high rather than too low. Just to give you some other kind of confirmation of how we've known about this area, for forever, when people are emotionally distressed, where have we put the cold compress? On the forehead. See, if it were about temperature or blood pressure, you should put the cold compress at the carotid. But we put it here because we somehow psychologically, subconsciously know that soothing at that level does something. When you see people who are tense, what do? They subconsciously know if I could reach those fibers, I could soothe. Well, the hand can't get through the bony plate of the brain, of the skull, but the mind can. Okay? So, first thing you want to do is you want to practice locating those fibers. Now, there's two ways to do this. I'm going to demonstrate first how you do this on your own. One, if somebody's watching this and they're by themselves, they have to do it on their own. If you're treating a vet, some vets may not want to be touched. It is better if you can get a partner and do this with a partner, because when you're doing it on yourself, your attention is distracted by your own muscle tightness. But what you do is, if you're doing it on yourself, you take your middle finger, and just watch me through this first, and you place your middle finger at that mid-forehead level. What we're doing is we're saying, imagine if lines were coming out of the tips of your fingers, where would they meet in your head? So by putting your middle finger at the forehead and your thumb at that same level, but right at the front of the ear, where would these two lines meet? See, I suppose you could take two hands and do it, but one of the problems with doing it on yourself is your own movement distracts you. That's why if you're working with a partner, you reverse the fingers. If I were working with someone else, I would put my thumb on their forehead and my middle finger on the side, because it's just not as awkward. When you're doing it on yourself, you do middle finger and thumb, because this is awkward. But you then rotate the hand. You go, where would these two meet? And then you bring your thumb up top, where would these two meet in the head? Men have slightly bigger hands than most women, so men could touch all three places at once. Does not work. In our years of researching this, it's easier to go, where would these two meet? Where would these two meet? And rotate it than trying to touch all three. Does everybody understand that? So take a moment, doing this on yourself. Question first?
Pressure.
Light touch. Yeah, because if you're squeezing, you're in distress from that. Because you're more wanting to imagine if there was a line coming out of that, where would it, some people, they don't do well with lines. So I say, well, think of a plane going through and a plane going through, where would they intersect? Also, some people are very visual. They visualize well. Some people cannot visualize to save their life, but they can kind of feel within the head. So tell them they're not trying to picture the tissue or what does it look like. It's just the feeling of where those lines would meet and getting a sense of that spot. Okay? If you're doing it on a partner, one of the common questions you get is eyes open or eyes closed. I'm exposed to a lot of the brain research for learning, for education through my wife. There's something called the 5 elements of a brain-compatible learning environment. And one of the key 5 elements is choices. And by the way, anybody who's watching this that's in military instruction, there's an automatic dampener to retention in military things if people feel I'm forced to learn this. I'm a contract, The minute you lose that feeling of choice, you tend to rebel and don't retain. So wherever you can put options in, give people choices of things, you can overcome that. So as far as choices go, eyes open, eyes closed, your choice. I recommend eyes closed because you cut out visual distractions. If you're doing this with a partner, I recommend the person experiencing go eyes closed And I jokingly say, the person touching them, please be eyes open so you're not poking them in the eye. And by the way, everybody knows that kids instinctively do this. They have their own right way of doing it. They just go a different direction. They go this way. No. My wife's a teacher. Everybody knows the difference between boogers and broccoli? What? Kids won't eat broccoli.